We are back. That's right. They gave us a second year. The best podcast available is back. I'm Jason Gibbs. To the left of me, the great Andrew Gribble. Best podcast available, Gribbs. We're back counting down the days to the 2020 NFL Draft here in, well, not here, but in sunny Las Vegas. Right now it's doing something outside. I have no idea what it's doing, but
yeah, this is an interesting. I think we tested ourselves out in a huge way last year by doing a draft podcast in a year that the Browns ultimately never had a first-round pick. So that made us dig real deep. So now we're back in a traditional situation with the number 10 pick. You have a GM. You've got 4 picks in the first 3 rounds. I mean, this is something where this should be a little easier after last year when we're scrambling on day 3 guys midway through the season. So we'll be good to go with a lot of good topics.
I feel like we were 4 or 5 episodes in and realizing we had 8 more to go before the draft, and we didn't have a first-round pick.
Yeah, that was a big blow to the momentum we had built. But I think that now we've just been dealt the fact that we're going to have to talk about offensive linemen here for the next 10 to 12 weeks.
Offensive line, defensive line, maybe a safety or two, some wide receivers in there before this is all said and done. As I said, we're on with you for the next 15 weeks. Now, the draft is 13 weeks from now, but we'll go 2 weeks after the fact. We'll meet the rookies from rookie minicamp. And just a few other things as we put the 2020 draft to bed. But we will be with you all the way up to April 23rd and day 1 of the draft from Las Vegas. Coming up on today's podcast, happy to be joined by Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Looking forward to that. You've been down to Mobile many times.
Yes, first year I haven't gone in 8 years. So I felt like there was something missing that week, but I was able to follow it from afar, and it was another good event for the draft.
Yeah, indeed, and it's one of the better events to kick off really the entire draft process. We can talk north-south game, east-west shrine game, things like that, but it really gets going with the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, and it's gotten better and better in the fact that this year, and we'll talk to Jim about it. I mean, they have a quarterback. I don't think many people are projecting him number 1. No one would do that, but they've got a quarterback that could easily be a top 5 pick down there, and he had a good week in Justin Herbert.
Yeah, no question about it. We'll see if that opens up some things maybe for the Browns at number 10. The more good quarterbacks, the more teams fighting to get ahead, the more maybe other players sliding back to number 10. So we'll talk to Jim Nagy here in just a minute. We will also do our mock drafts. All the bigwigs with mock drafts. So,
it's the first big round of them so far.
Next week, it might be Gribble and I throwing up a mock draft.
Yeah, when Kuiper rolls his out, that's when the season has officially begun.
And we're also going to talk about how the Browns have a new GM and Andrew Berry and the challenges he faces here over the next 13 weeks. We talk about the draft, but there's a lot happening before the draft. Yeah. So that being said, let's go to the hotline. Welcome in our first guest for the 2020 Best Podcast available. We are in Berea. He is down in Mobile, Alabama. He is the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl and has been so since 2018, if I recall correctly, June of 18. So he just wrapped up his second Senior Bowl week. Jim Nagy joins us on the hotline. Jim, appreciate the time today. Congratulations on another fantastic week down in Mobile, Alabama. Your takeaways from a news-filled week down in Mobile.
Yeah, guys, thanks for having me on. It was an outstanding week. It couldn't have went any better from the players and all the coordination and everything. It's kind of a 3-ring circus down here during the week, and we had a bunch of different events this year to build out the week, trying to draw more fans to the game. So we had a leadership summit. We had a Mardi Gras parade on Friday night with the players. We had an outdoor concert, free concert downtown Mobile on Friday night after the parade. And, you envision things. This was the first year we did some of these things. And you always, sometimes you envision them and they don't come off how you intend for them to come off. But it was an incredible week. Everything came off as planned or better. And it's time to exhale a little bit, but couldn't have asked for a better Senior Bowl week this year.
Yeah, and you can't get this lucky every year, but it seems like, again, the Senior Bowl got another of one of the top-tier quarterbacks that is in this year's draft class, in Justin Herbert. It seemed like he obviously had a very good week down there. How much does that help the game and kind of raise the level of competition with some of those other quarterbacks that end up going to the game as well?
Yeah, it does. The quarterbacks move the needle, and I wasn't really aware of that too much. I really didn't care that too much, frankly, about it when I worked in the NFL. But I learned that last year with our game, and then do some ESPN stuff now after the draft, and that's what they want to talk about. They want to talk about the QBs. So, yeah, we were fortunate this year. We had Justin Herbert, had an awesome week, probably solidified himself as a top 5 guy. It'll be our 5th top 10 quarterback in the last 4 years. So he was the headliner. Jordan Love, we're ripping through the tape in the office right now, and man, Jordan Love had a good week too from Utah State. And Jalen Hurts was, a headliner as well, Heisman Trophy runner-up. Big deal down here in Alabama, coming back home to where he did so many great things in our state. And then, Anthony Gordon is a guy that was the North Team Offensive Player of the Game, and he had a really nice game from Washington State, Anthony Gordon. So yeah, another good year of quarterbacks, and you can only get what's out there each year, and we've been lucky the last couple of years. There's been some good quarterbacks.
Jim, one of the other big positions that shined down in Mobile, Alabama, the wide receiver group, and while there's a number of underclassmen, a number of seniors, I'd say 6, 7, even 8 guys made their names known with really strong performances last week down in Mobile.
They did. We actually just got done ripping through all the one-on-ones from last week here in like the last hour and a half. And, Chase Claypool from Notre Dame, 6'4", 230, 80-inch wingspan. He had a nice week. Antonio Gandy-Golden, another guy from Liberty, another tall 6'4" guy, had a great week. AGG had an incredible week. Denzel Mims from Baylor was really, really good. Van Jefferson on the South team from Florida. He was almost uncoverable with his route running. And then locally to you guys up there in Ohio, KJ Hill from Ohio State was great for the North team as well. He got voted wide receiver of the week by his peers for the practice week, and KJ had a really nice week as well. And a number of other guys did too, but those guys that I just mentioned really, really stood out.
Yeah, a position that is really getting the most attention for the Browns this offseason is offensive tackle, and it looked like Josh Jones, he kind of fits that prototype as a left tackle. What did you see from him this week, and is that guy someone you would describe now as a definite first-round talent?
Yeah, I think Josh played his way into that first-round mix for sure. He's got left tackle feet. He's really balanced. He's patient. Not the longest guy in the world, but long enough when you have as good a feet as he does, and he's really reactive out there on the edge. So he can handle those speed rushers, space rushers out there. So he had a nice week. Matt Peart from UConn is another guy. You can't teach his length and his feet. He's just got an unbelievable combination of agility and length, and he was really good out there as well. Those two guys. And Terrence Steele from Texas Tech is another guy, more of a right tackle. I'm not sure what the Browns need right now, but Terrence more of a right tackle, but had a really good week as well.
Browns need them both, so I think we're good with either left tackle or a right tackle. But you've obviously got a lot of experience in scouting, and you've seen these tackles come up. This seems like a very deep tackle class in general, but I'm just wondering, with the way the offenses have evolved in college football, how much has scouting that position changed and more maybe making more projections than you might have been in the past, where it seemed like there was more sure things at that position?
Yeah, it's a good question, and it has, and it's not just the tackles; it's offensive line in general. You're getting a lot, all the spread going on in college football. A lot of these kids don't even get in a three-point stance ever. They come down to the Senior Bowl, and it's the first time they've ever been in a three-point. We had a guy in that vein last year, Andre Dillard from Washington State, who ended up going 22 overall last year to the Eagles, and he'd never been in a three-point. So, Tuesday was rough, Wednesday was a little better. Thursday was good, and the game was really good. He got better each day, so that's all the teams are looking for. But yeah, it's more of a projection now than it's ever been. These guys are just popping into their stance and kind of dancing in front of people. You don't see guys come off the ball and actually get into anyone anymore and try to move them. So The offensive line coaching is at a premium right now in the NFL, and it's harder now with I say the new CBA, but when I say the new CBA, that was bargained about 7 years ago. But it's harder for those guys with only 14 days in pads during the season and all the limited time they have in the off season. It's harder to train, so it's really difficult. That's why you see a lot of teams going to the schools that do run more of a traditional pro-style offense, and you can get guys that are more ready-made.
Jim Nagy joins us, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Follow him at Jim Nagy _SB. 18 years in the National Football League in scouting and evaluation. And, Jim, what is your advice to these kids? I mean, they're not kids at this point. I mean, they're grown men, but here they are. They just finished their college football season. Some of them have played 13 games, 14 games, and now they really aren't going to get any downtime until after their rookie season in the NFL. I mean, it is a gauntlet leading up to the draft, and then they get drafted, and then you've got to learn an NFL system. You might get a couple weeks there in July, but what's your advice to these guys as they begin the process and they start the week down at the Reese's Senior Bowl?
No, you're absolutely right. It's this year, this next 12 months for them. It's a whirlwind, and it's a lot's being thrown at them. And again, right now they're trying to transition from being college players to pros. So they've got a lot of different people in their ear. I guess the first piece of advice would be to surround yourself with the right people, and have the right people in your ear, which some of these guys don't have, unfortunately. But all I can do is prep them for our week down here in Mobile, and it's a taxing week. There's a lot thrown at these guys. It's pretty stressful. We try to incorporate things like the Mardi Gras parade this year. I was worried about how that would come off, for the players' sake. And man, they loved it. It was their favorite part of the week because they could just relax and have a good time together. Because you're meeting with all 32 teams, sometimes multiple people from those 32 teams. Like you said, you're trying to learn a playbook. You're trying to execute a playbook on the field. And they're under a microscope for this week, but they can really help themselves if they handle it the right way. And again, they're doing it in pads and helmets, and they're doing real football things. Where I'm just drawing back on my time in the league, looking at a lot of the picks, the teams I worked for, maybe missed on. It was because we overvalued the whole shorts and t-shirts part of the process, and I think teams are realizing that too. So I think the Senior Bowl over the last couple of years has taken on even more importance because teams are really focusing on what they do down here in pads.
Jim, since you've been on both sides of it, can you kind of explain the differences between the kind of interviews these players go through at the Senior Bowl, maybe compared to the Combine, and how important these interviews really are? Because it seems like the attention gets focused way more on the Combine with the interview process, but it seems like it's just as busy, if not busier, at the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, it's a lot of it is scout interviews down here and assistant coaches. It's a little more laid back. And when I say more laid back, just the setting is a little more relaxed. I'm sure for the players, it's just as stressful. And the hard part for them is, guys, they're getting asked the same thing 32 times. I mean, a lot of these teams are asking all the same basic information about, who raised you, where'd you grow up, a lot of the same questions. So, like I told them at orientation, the hard part is for you to, try to put on the same face for every team and be genuine with every team, and don't get lulled into the, just the routine and patterned answers, and coming across, is kind of rehearsed, and just really giving each team an individual attention and let them really get to know you. Be genuine, and that can be tough when you're going over the same things over and over. But it's a little more relaxed in terms of, you're just sitting with one guy, where the Combine, each team gets 60 interviews. That's where everyone, from the outside looking in, everyone thinks of the Combine interviews as those 60 interviews, and each team can, they get 60 guys, and they cut that down to 45 this year, the Combine did. So that again, that put more emphasis on the Senior Bowl as well. But, you get 15 minutes, and it's like speed dating. These guys all have a little dance card set up that they put in their lanyard around their neck at night, and they go from room to room, and you get your 15 minutes. And every team I've been with structured it a little differently. Some teams do it more interrogation style, and it's the head coach and GM, and it's a little more intense, and they'll crank talked through him, and Pete Carroll ripped his shirt off, and so Pete tried to keep things loose for the guys, and so every team does it differently, but again, it's really important because again, back to teams making mistakes. I think it's put too much emphasis on the underwear Olympics part, and it's also not knowing the person well enough. I think the easiest part when you're in football, as long as most guys are in the NFL, watching the tape is really the easier part. The harder part is figuring out the person and what's going to happen when they have to become a pro. When they have money in their pocket and they have more time. That's really what separates guys at the next level. So this is a great opportunity for these players. Is that this is the only part of the process where they get a week-long exposure with these teams, and really the teams really feel like they get to know them. So it's back to your original question. It's a little more laid back down here, but again, it's incredibly important. Just anytime you get in front of these teams, it's important.
What are you most proud of in the time that you've been there? 19 months, I believe now. What are you most proud of that you guys have been able to accomplish here with the Reese's Senior Bowl?
Just the way the staff has come together. We had some changes last offseason, and really we have a different vision for the game. I think it should be more of a national game. I think that we've got a great event down here in Mobile. We're trying to communicate that to the public. It's not just an NFL event. It's not just a media event. This is the ultimate fan event. I mean, you've got great practices where you can stand 10 feet from these drills. You can go over to the hotel, and you could have grabbed Baker Mayfield 2 years ago and taken a selfie with them. I mean, these guys are just walking around. And then you've got the whole NFL. We had credentialed almost 1,000 people from the NFL this year, and these guys are just walking the streets of Mobile. I dipped into a bar to meet a friend, during this week, and there was 3 head coaches sitting at the bar together having a beer. So it's really, really unique. Diehard NFL fans, they would be pigs and slop down here. I mean, it is really, for lack of a better reference, it's really an awesome week. But just the way our staffs come together, and again, in convincing the elite players that this game is for them. We were in a little bit of a rut there before we took over and our crew came in. They were at like 3, 4, and 3 in the first round, and then last year we spiked up to 10, which is a massive spike. And this year I think we're going to be, right at maybe a little more than that. So getting these really elite players that probably for a little while there thought, if I'm a first or second rounder, why do I need the Senior Bowl? Getting them to buy in that, hey, I probably need this game more than the other guys because where I'm going to be drafted, every one of those spots is worth millions of dollars. Whereas, if you're a 6th rounder and you go up to the 4th round, that's a big jump and you're making a lot of money. But if you go from 22 to 16, that's a ton of money. So really, just the spike in the numbers and really trying to change this thing and make it a bigger event. That's probably the thing we're most proud of.
Well, Jim, we appreciate the time. We know you're busy. I hope you get a little downtime, get to see the wife a little bit, say hi to the kids, and, actually get to refamiliarize yourself before you're back in the war room trying to figure out the 2021 Reese's Senior Bowl, man. We really appreciate the time. It's a fantastic event, seniorbowl.com, with all the information, a great way to get out of the snow and ice. Let's go with that direction.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And follow us. I appreciate you guys having me on. Follow us on Twitter between now and the draft. We will be posting a ton of stuff coming out of our game and everything leading up to the draft. We'll get you educated. We're going to have a lot of video breakdowns and a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff that happened here at Senior Bowl week. So, after the Browns have their draft, you can get on our Twitter feed and Instagram and you can go back and see who the Browns took, and especially the guys who were down here, and get some cool insight. But thanks a lot, guys, for having me on.
Hey, Jim, we appreciate it. Continued success. Thank you so much. That's Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl. Guest number 1 on the BPA.
Good way to start.
Right off the bat. Some good intel. Senior Bowl takeaways. It is an important game. When you look at some of the guys that are on this Cleveland Browns team, the 2 that come to mind, obviously Baker Mayfield, number 1, but people may not remember Larry Ogunjobi came from the Senior Bowl.
Yeah, there's been a bunch.
Yeah.
I think I'm trying to pull it up now, but it's something around 18 to 20 players on the roster right now with the Browns. were at the Senior Bowl in some capacity. I believe you can go all the way to, I think, like a guy like Tavier Thomas was down there. I mean, it just goes it really is wide-ranging. And, Baker Mayfield, if we're being honest, I mean, he is the exception. Like,
sure.
It's just the odds are not in the favor every year of the Senior Bowl producing the number one pick in the draft. But that was a rare year where, you look back on it, Baker almost had to go to that game because Josh Allen was also down there. And so it was rare that they had two of the big-time quarterbacks at that game. Obviously, Sam Darnold and Josh Rosen were not there because they were, they weren't seniors. But, it's getting better and better, and I think now it's getting to the point where last year having 93 players from the Senior Bowl getting drafted, I mean, that is so much higher than it was just 10 years ago or so. So this is where you fill up your roster with a ton of guys that are going to play some major roles on your team, whether it be a second-round pick, late first round. I mean, these are the guys that make up the meat of the draft.
Yeah, no question about it. I know last week you wrote about it on clevelandbrowns.com. Or were there any other guys that stood out to you, guys that maybe Jim didn't touch on?
He mentioned KJ Hill, who had a really big week, and it was very reminiscent of what Terry McLaurin did the previous year. So back-to-back years where an Ohio State receiver who maybe might not be the most talented or gifted guy, but a guy that produced, went on and continued to just do that at the Senior Bowl and against elevated competition and some of the best seniors in the country. So he had a very good week. The one guy I was going to ask him about, but we kind of trended on different topics, was Adam Troutman, the tight end out of Dayton. He's going to be the first. Yeah. Odds are he's going to be the first drafted player out of Dayton since the mid-'70s. He fits the mold of kind of a bigger tight end. He likes blocking, but he can also make a ton of plays in the passing game. He's someone to watch. It is interesting because his prospect status kind of reminds me of that. Remember Adam Shaheen from a couple years ago? He really hasn't done much since coming to the NFL. But Troutman is going to be a guy that is going to elevate maybe toward the top of that tight end class because it's not a really good tight end class. I think the top rated tight end Kmet out of Notre Dame, he wasn't there. But really, you're probably not going to get a first-round tight end this year. But Troutman's someone you could maybe look at day 2, day 3. He had a very good week down there.
Yeah, and I think Mel Kiper in his big board has him as one of the top, number 3 tight end coming out in the draft. So definitely something to watch on that end.
Yeah, it's just sometimes you have to remember Dayton has a football team. I mean, it's just one of those things where you associate them so much with college basketball. They're a great college basketball school, but they also do have a football team. But this will be a history-making pick, maybe the first draft pick in nearly 40 or so years.
So that's a little recap on the Senior Bowl, getting the draft process started. Away we go for the next 13 weeks leading up to draft day number 1, April 23rd, 2020 in Las Vegas, Nevada. I know the CBD guys were hoping to get a trip there to broadcast from Radio Row. We're not going to do that. No. We'll be here. It's a lot easier because the guys are here the next day.
Oh, yeah.
Just makes a lot more sense.
We went through a 2017 NFL draft with 3 first-round picks. None of them were at the draft. Yeah. Which that's hard to do. And then even in 2018, I think Denzel might have been there, but Baker Mayfield was not there. So it's a tricky event, but you're right. Everyone ends up coming to us. Press conferences are here. It's
a lot easier.
Better to be in Berea.
Don't get me wrong. I love Vegas. Who doesn't love Vegas?
Yeah.
But business comes first. All right, speaking of business, the business of football here in Berea with the Cleveland Browns, new head coach in Kevin Stefanski, and on Monday we have a new GM. It's an old face as the Browns.
A young one, though.
Yes, but a young one. The vice president of player personnel and GM Andrew Berry, now with the football team, back with the football team, running the show. He was with the Eagles as their vice president of football operations, already making some moves with regards to his staff and a lot to do. You're going to have free agency, the combine, pro days, all this stuff before we even get to 13 weeks from now. But Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski are going to be responsible for figuring out who's going to get drafted April 23rd, 24th, and 25th.
Yeah, and when we talk about that process, it really does begin first off with evaluating your own roster. And I think that's the thing that's going to be ongoing here for the next few weeks, and especially because, with the reports out there about your defensive coordinator choice, he's not here yet because he's busy doing some stuff with the Super Bowl. So that even maybe adds a little bit more delay on projecting how guys are going to fit within the defense. Then you look at their salary number. Do they make sense for you moving forward? How are they going to fit within these new schemes? That dictates your decisions in free agency. And then even though these things maybe shouldn't go hand in hand, you should be drafting to fill up all your areas of your roster, not just areas you need. But what you do in free agency is going to have a little bit of an effect on what you do in the draft. So all of this goes hand in hand. All of this is going to be done at a rapid pace because, we've got guys in this building who are already working on the 2021 draft. I mean, that's how things operate in the NFL. It's more than a year-long thing. But now you have to make a lot of quick decisions you would make over a longer period of time, now over a shorter period of time. So I think for Andrew Berry, these first couple weeks, tons and tons of information gathering, and ultimately at some point here, you usually do it before the combine. You get all your scouts in the building and start hashing it out. This is what he's been through before. He'll have his own way of doing things, but he's familiar at least with a lot of the guys that are still here in the building.
Yeah, and that does there is something to be said for that, because things are going to happen, and they're going to happen very quickly as we roll into the quote off season. But Andrew Berry, a guy with a lot of experience, came from a great program and great team in Indianapolis prior to his first stint. Afterward, I mean, the year that he spent in Philadelphia with Howie Roseman, I can only imagine that you're going to pull some good knowledge out of that building and what those guys do. So I know that there's some questions about Andrew Berry and, well, is he too young and all that. This guy's been around. He knows what he's doing, and it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out.
Yeah, when you get hired as a VP of player personnel at the age of 29, you're on the fast path to being a GM. And I think that it was headed this way no matter what, whether it was going to be with the Browns or not. I mean, Andrew Berry was going to be a GM here in the next couple of years. Clearly, there was some interest by Carolina, but they couldn't at that time guarantee full control of the 53-man roster. So he didn't do the interview there. So it's clearly a respected name in the business. And like I said on CBD earlier this week, when you go back and look at the press release when we announced him as the VP of Player Personnel, the one quote there outside the building is from the most old school GM and that you can think of, and Bill Polian. But now he's associated with kind of the new wave of thinking, analytic-based thinking. He's just a smart, gifted guy, and I think that he really. But he comes from the football background, played at Harvard,
exactly.
Was a pro scout evaluator for so many years for the Colts. So this guy has a mix of a lot of different things, which is what you see in guys who end up becoming GMs, because it is more than being a scout. It is more than knowing analytics. It's a combination of everything, and I think the Browns believe they've got kind of the right mix, and most importantly, the right guy to work with Kevin Stefanski, and finding guys that fit what the coach wants to do.
Before we get into our mock draft segment, the draft is in Vegas. Let's go back to that real quick, because this whole taking the show on the road, I think, has been good for the National Football League. And obviously it's going to really be good for us a year from now when it comes to Cleveland. But Vegas is a whole nother dynamic. And now you're talking about putting players on boats and really turning it into quite the spectacle. And this is going to be a little different than Nashville, than Philly, than Chicago, than anything that I think we've seen here.
Yeah, it'll be interesting, I think, mostly because it's going to almost feel like a United Nations type crowd of NFL fans. You know what I mean? Because there's not, even though there's probably going to be a lot of Raiders fans in there that are excited about them, you don't have the years of fan base and excitement about that team in Las Vegas. And I think that's what's going to be neat about Las Vegas games in general throughout these first few seasons. I think they're going to do better, obviously, than the Chargers do with their fans. But these are going to be those games where you see a huge road presence every year. Fans are going to be planning their Vegas trips to go see their favorite team play the Raiders. And that's what's going to – I think that's what made Las Vegas such a exciting possibility for the NFL for so many years, while you've been hearing about Las Vegas as a potential destination. And it'll be neat to see it. And I think it starts with the draft. And, it is crazy to go back. I mean, it's more crazy to even remember it wasn't so long ago when the draft started on Saturday. I mean, that's how much things have changed, where that seems like years ago, but it really wasn't that long ago. It was early morning when we saw Joe Thomas get drafted and be on a boat. I mean, that wasn't too long ago.
No.
So the draft has certainly evolved. It's only getting bigger and bigger. It's just going to be, to me, what makes the draft exciting is if there's any doubt going into the number 1 pick, and right now we don't really feel like there's going to be. So that to me diminishes the excitement a little bit, because there's no doubt, seemingly, from anyone who's going to be number 1 pick or even who's going to be the number 2 pick. It's almost like the draft starts at number 3.
Yeah, and that's where I was going next. The Bengals don't have to tell us who they're taking at number 1, but they're really not going to think or even contemplate trading this number 1 pick, are they?
I mean, unless you get the total Godfather offer, which is always a possibility. I mean, the Rams got that offer for RG3 way back when, and they traded out of that pick in 2011.
But this is a team that doesn't have a quarterback.
No, and that's what's interesting. But it is funny because the interesting thing is they got to work really close with Justin Herbert all week, this past week. Justin Herbert could have been maybe the number 1 quarterback last year had he gone pro. I mean, maybe behind Kyler Murray, but he would probably have been in the same draft position last year as he is this year. But the Bengals Herbert got the head start with that Bengals coaching staff. Worked a lot with them. I think ultimately at the end of the day, it's going to be Joe Burrow. Unless something crazy happens, you don't want to risk anything. But
the combine, who knows?
Combine, all that kind of stuff. I do have. It is funny because Bengals fans, we saw it in Cincinnati in December when we were down there. There was already a sign for Joe Burrow in the stands because they had clinched the number 1 pick. But I have a friend, one of my good friends, is a huge Bengals fan, and all I do throughout the last month is I've sent him tweets or articles that is casting any doubt on Joe Burrow being the number 1 pick. It's my new favorite thing to do. So I sent him a picture of I think it was the old Bengals O-line coach earlier this week that said it's not a done deal, that they're considering all options, including Justin Herbert. I just sent him the link about Carson Palmer. He would advise Joe Burrow to think twice about going to Cincinnati. And so I like to poke the bear a little bit, but it just seems like we ultimately know at the end of the day that that's what this is going to be. And all of a sudden the AFC North is just loaded at the quarterback position, which is not something we want to see.
Yeah. What do you make of Justin Herbert?
I mean, he's really tall, and I think that's the first takeaway. He's really good, and I think that he's
really good.
I think
I don't know.
I'm rooting for him to at least be good on draft day, because then it bumps down the position players for the Browns at number 10. But he's there's been the concern that now we're hearing the debate, is he too tall, which is like the old question about Brock Osweiler and things like that. But I think he's fighting to be the number 2 quarterback in this draft against an injured Tua Tagovailoa. I mean, that's what's interesting. But now with the Chargers moving on from Rivers, I mean, that's a team that could be linked to Herbert, but ultimately he could be someone that teams trade up to get, because I think that he fits more of those old prototypes that you might want to see out of a quarterback. But he's also athletic. We saw him running a bunch in the Rose Bowl earlier this month. I mean, he's got a lot of skills. I mean, so he's a new style quarterback that can help out these teams. And I think that there are more teams that are going to be willing to move into this first part of the first round than there maybe were last year.
All right, let's get down to it. It is time for our mock draft segment. We have 3 big ones because usually about this time, anybody in the NFL draft puts out their mock drafts. And we kick it off with Bucky Brooks on NFL.com, his first mock draft. Tristan Wirfs, the offensive tackle from Iowa, the junior. And the comment, the Browns need another rock-solid edge blocker in the starting lineup. Just a little tease, this position's going to come up a lot in this segment when it comes to the Browns at number 10.
I did a mock draft roundup for ClevelandBrowns.com, and it was all offensive tackles. So last week there was at least a couple different positions thrown in there. But the interesting thing is what I've been looking at in these mock drafts with these different offensive tackles is it's everyone ranks them a little bit differently. And I think that from Bucky's perspective, he would, in his situation, would have Tristan Wirfs be the 3rd tackle off the board behind a Jedrick Wills and Andrew Thomas, and he expects 4 tackles to go in the top 11. So that's different than we've seen in years past. The one thing of note with Wirfs, and I definitely don't think this would happen here, but Daniel Jeremiah in the past has projected Wirfs as a potential guard, which I think he could still play tackle, but clearly he's got some versatility and could maybe in the different situations be a guard.
3 quarterbacks going in the top 10. Burrow at 1. He's got Tagovailoa from Alabama at number 5. Herbert at number 6 to the Chargers. I mean, everything stays pretty even. It is funny because the wide receiver class is so good this year, but hardly a mention here in these first few. Everybody drafting linemen, whether it's defensive linemen, whether it's offensive linemen, or quarterback, or that safety that I love, Isaiah Simmons.
I was running on the treadmill this morning, and I was seeing the scrolls as NFL Network does these mock drafts with the scrolls, and it's crazy. It's like the wide receiver run starts at like 13, and it's like all these teams that you think are pretty good just adding wide receivers, like the Cowboys, just a bunch of different offenses. And that's why it was interesting that the comment that was made before the Citrus Bowl or whatever it's called now, where Nick Saban said no one on his team was projected as a top 15 pick except for Tua. And I think that was crazy because Jerry Jeudy was like going into this, you would think was going to be a top 5 pick, but it might not make sense with some of these teams that are in the top 10. It seems like a lot of these top 10 teams don't need wide receivers. They just need other positions in need.
All right, we move on. Daniel Jeremiah at NFL.com, the draft guru taking over for Mike Mayock. His second year as the lead draft analyst on NFL.com, and he has the Browns at number 10 taking Andrew Thomas, the junior offensive tackle out of Georgia. In his comment, the Browns must upgrade their offensive tackle situation. Thomas has some areas for improvement, but he'll be too tempting to pass up. Does that mean that we're talking about a work in progress? Some things that need to be done? If I'm picking at number 10, I'm kind of hoping.
I kind of want to plug and play.
Yeah.
But Thomas interests me in that it looks like he could play both the tackle spots if he wanted to, and the Browns could have some needs at both of the tackle spots. So that's something that interests me. But he to me seems like the guy that might have the biggest upside, but it might be the tougher transition of the group. So it really what it comes down to is the what your evaluation ultimately ranks these tackles at. So I think with these 4 tackles that keep getting mentioned in the top 10, I think each team is going to grade these guys differently, and it ultimately wouldn't surprise me if a team like a Cleveland, a team like someone else that maybe the Cardinals that are going after these tackles, wouldn't surprise me if some teams ultimately have to trade up to get the guy that they really want for their specific offense.
Yeah, and again, I think a lot of things are in play. I mean, Arizona has a quarterback. I think they would be willing to listen if someone fell.
Yeah.
Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville is going to be the tough team to read right in front of you. But Miami, the Chargers, I mean, maybe the Giants would be looking to move to package some things up at number 4 to jump ahead of Miami for one of those, the second or third best quarterback in the draft. But it definitely looks like Burrow 1, Chase Young 2, as we talked about, Okudah, the defensive back, the corner from Ohio State, very talented corner. Keep seeing him at number 3, but I think anything is in play because, again, Washington's got a quarterback.
Yeah, and of note, a friend of the show, Dame Brugler, says Thomas has shock absorbers for hands, and he projects him as an early starter. So I think there's some
Dane, I like you.
Yeah, so there's clearly some people like Andrew Thomas better than others. It seems to me a lot more like Jedrick Wills, the best out of Alabama. He's been one that has not been linked to the Browns too much because it seems like he comes off the board first. But maybe if you do get lucky, I have seen mock drafts where the Browns do get the top offensive tackle they're choosing. We'll have to wait and see, though.
All right, we move on to Mel Kiper Jr., ESPN.com, draft analyst extraordinaire. At number 10, he has the Browns taking Mekhi Becton. I'm sure I probably just butchered that. Did I butcher that?
No, it's Mekhi.
It's Mekhi. Yeah. All right. See? All right. I'm 1 for 1. Gribbs prepped me on it beforehand. I told him I was going to mess it up by the time it got to me. Out of Louisville, the offensive tackle. And Mel's comments, I'm not quite sure what to make of them. This is a tough pick to project because the Browns don't even have a GM yet. We do have a GM now. Yeah. Just a quick heads up. But Cleveland's clear weakness in 2019 was at left tackle. Greg Robinson was in and out of the starting lineup there and is now a free agent. He's not the long-term answer. If the Browns can't upgrade there in free agency, they should look to the draft. Becton, 6'7", 370 pounds. Take a minute to process that. Mountain of a man is rising since he declared for the draft, and scouts got a look at his 2019 film. Great feet for his size, can plow through defenders in the running game. The last offensive tackle the Browns took in the first round, Joe Thomas, at number 3 in 2007. If Becton can come close to Thomas's ceiling, new coach Kevin Stefanski can stick around a long time, which we're all hoping for.
It's interesting to me, though, that Mel describes as if he's coming out of a Division III school. These scouts are discovering his tape. I mean, he played at Louisville, and they were pretty good last year. They stunk the year before that, but they were good this past year. I mean, they were second in the ACC Atlantic behind Clemson. So I mean, he's a good player, and to me, with that size, that makes me wonder: could he be more of a right tackle? Could he be more of your mauler on that side? But we'll see. I mean, he's one of those people where it seems of the four, the opinions are maybe the most mixed on him right now. So maybe there isn't just a ton of information on this guy right now. But it is interesting that we talked a lot about the Senior Bowl and how there was a bunch of good left tackles down there. All four of these guys that were being mentioned, these are all declare early guys. So this is such a stark difference from just a couple years ago when I remember when the Browns were going through the process in 2018, the first year post Joe Thomas, you're thinking Browns got to get a left tackle. But that draft just didn't have any left tackles at all. This seems like the opposite of that, where there are a lot of options where you can upgrade at that position. And I think it's crucial because we've talked about before, the free agency crop, there's little to be had outside of maybe a couple potential rentals for a year or two that are near the end of their careers. This is the draft where you have to stock up, and why I can't rule out the possibility of drafting multiple at this position because you just don't have a ton of depth at that position on your roster right now.
All right, so that's this week's mock drafts. They are the big ones. Next week, we're probably going to have to pull something. We're going to have to go deep to find the next round of mock drafts because I think everybody takes a little time now to process things until we get closer to the NFL Combine, which is about 5 weeks from right now. Final thoughts from you on episode 1 in the books. It's good to be back,
and we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. It's just, it might be a little tough talking linemen for the next 10 to 12 weeks, but it's what you need. We saw the Browns in 2019 needed to be better on the offensive line, especially at the tackle positions. I mean, this may not be the sexiest year of talking prospects. It'd be a lot easier to talk about Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, those kind of guys, but these are the guys that can win you games that matter. All
right, we want to thank Paul Taylor, spinning the dials on the other side of the glass and keeping us up and running and getting us up and running. We have graphics, we have logos, and speaking of logos, Ricky Sowinski with an outstanding job and a big assist. So props to him. He created all the things behind us to make us look good. Want to thank Jim Nagy, the executive director of the Reese's Senior Bowl, for his time. Again, seniorbowl.com. Nice little January vacation in Mobile. That's all I'm saying. Have a nice little time. Andrew Gribble, outstanding to have you back.
Yep.
Looking forward to the 2020 season, the off season, as we like to call it, that really is the season that sets everything up. No, it really doesn't end. You can subscribe to the best podcast available wherever you go to get your podcasts. Log on to clevelandbrowns.com to hear it. You can check us out on video. We're now videotaping everything thanks to Mr. Taylor at our YouTube channel.
Browns YouTube channel or clevelandbrowns.com.
Exactly. Keep it locked to clevelandbrowns.com and all of our social media platforms for the latest as we get closer to the 2020 draft. For Andrew Gribble, I'm Jason Gibbs. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening to the best podcast available.